Welcome to the Roads and Infrastructure Podcast. I'm your host, Tom O'Keen, and I'm very pleased today to be joined by Tony Aloisio, the Chief Executive Officer of the Australian Flexible Pavement Association. So thank you so much for joining us today, Tony.
My pleasure, Tom.
I know that there's quite a few people who would already be aware of who AFPA are and what they do, but maybe for some of the listeners that aren't actually sure, can you tell us a bit about the organisation and just the kind of work that you guys do?
Yeah, sure. So AFPA has been around since 1969. It represents a group of members who basically look after the road network in Australia. That includes the flexible pavements in particular, so the actual road pavement, all of the asphalt and bitumen that comes with it. It previously was called the Australian Asphalt Pavements Association and looked specifically at the surfacing, but it's expanded to cover the entire flexible pavement. And it covers things like roads, which is the obvious place, but also airports, runways, taxiways, tennis courts, subdivisions, the whole sort of gamut like that. So a bunch of members who look after that. Our members also include the state road authorities. So every state road authority is a member of AFPA, and together we collaborate to actually manage the flexible surfacing diaspora of things like technical specifications and performance of pavements, that sort of thing.
I didn't know tennis courts was involved there as well.
Yeah, well, you know, I was involved in actually putting asphalt on the Kooyong grass when it was grass, and we just put asphalt straight over the top of it for some of the fancy tennis players to come along and do a little bit of practice before the Australian Open. But the Australian Open Melbourne Tennis Park is asphalt with the green top on top of it.
Yeah. And then your own journey, I think this is actually something I haven't really talked to you much about, how you got to AFPA in the first place. Can you tell me a bit about just what your entry into the industry actually was and maybe what drew you here?
Yeah. So I was a graduate. I was an engineer looking for a job and applied for a job with the Boral Group. It was the broad Boral Group. Didn't know where I might land if I got a job. And I can still remember the interview with a bunch of grey-haired old guys, you know, that were probably my age at the time, and thinking, what am I doing here? I got a job. And in fact, towards the end of my career, one of the guys' careers, he came to me and said, you know, I interviewed you. And I said, yes. He said, I asked you a question. Do you remember what that question was? I said, yeah, I remember that question. You asked me about me playing amateur football, and you said to me, have you ever been reported? And I said, no. And you sort of just looked at me, and he just looked at me and didn't know what to say after that. And then I said, so I thought I'd better fill the gap. And I said, yeah, but I've never been caught. And that's what got me the job. That answer,
because
he wanted to see if I had any sort of get up and go in me or what have you. So a bit different to what might happen today. There was certainly no personality profiles or any of that sort of stuff. So I got the job with Boral, and they put me into the concrete business. And look, I spent a year and a half there, and I could see it wasn't for me. It wasn't working out that great, and I wasn't that sort of keen on it. So I went to them and said, can I take some leave without pay? And I went backpacking around Europe by myself, travelled around for about 4 or 5 months. I really didn't think I'd come back, and I started running out of money and thought, yeah, it's time to go home. And I got back to Boral. I don't think they expected to see me back there, so they sort of said, what would you like to do? And we've got this bitumen and road surfacing industry, an asphalt industry that we could send you to. And I said, yeah. And he said, we've got a job in Queensland. I thought, well, I've been travelling all around Europe. I should be able to move to Queensland. And they sent me to Townsville. So I left Melbourne in the middle of July, landed in Townsville. I had 2 suitcases. One of them was full of my vinyl records, a half full of vinyl records. And I got to Townsville. I spent a few years in Townsville, loved it up there, met the people, got to all sorts of places like mining towns and what have you, and did this bitumen and asphalt work up at the Cairns airport. I can remember walking around on that hot tarmac as we laid it. Then moved from Townsville to Sydney to Canberra to Adelaide, and got back to Melbourne after. And that was about a 15-year journey. And when I got back to Melbourne, I remember thinking, you know, what have I been doing for 15 years? And I could see, I had a wife and 4 kids and a semi-trailer full of stuff and a big mortgage. And I thought, okay, so that's the first half of my career done. I've done all of that, and back to Melbourne, and then I became the operations and general manager of the Boral Asphalt business in Victoria. Later on, moved to Fulton Hogan, and then here I am at AFBA as a result after those sort of careers with those organisations.
Yep. What drew you to AFBA? What opportunity, or because obviously that's a change up from working for the companies and going from an association that would represent such companies. So why did that sort of draw you in there?
So I guess particularly when I got to Victoria, but even early in my career, I went to a few AFBA courses. It was something that Boral would send you to, and AFBA would do training on bitumen spraying or asphalt or what have you. And the people who were delivering that training were from the industry, so they were stalwarts from Pioneer Road Services, as they were back in the day, and other organisations, and they were like volunteers, if you like, into the AFBA world that they were all members of. So I started to get drawn in a little bit by that, and did a few bits and pieces. And then when I got to Victoria, I joined in with the branch, the Victorian AFBA branch, and got involved in actually delivering some of that training. So it just sort of like gradually built through, and as I got my experience up, that became a thing. I became the branch chairman, and then from being the Victorian branch chairman, I became Boral's representative on the AFBA board. And when I left Boral in about 2012 and joined Fulton Hogan, I went from being the board representative for Boral to the very next meeting being the board representative for Fulton Hogan, which was an interesting little swap. And that worked out really well. And so then I became the board chairman in the mid-2010s. And so I had this link to the industry. And I think the thing that drew me to it was the collegiate approach that the industry took. While we all competed pretty fiercely out in the field, we really took a collegiate approach at that board level to say what's best for industry, how do we actually make this work for us as a group. You got to know all the State Road Authority people as well, who are really important parts of it. So you felt this collaboration and collegiate atmosphere, and I liked it. And I became a part of that. When I left the industry altogether, I went to the Victorian government for 3 years, and on the big build that was going on here. And then I went out and did some consulting of my own, and it was a phone call from a guy called Rob Maguire, who was the chairman of the board of APA at the time, and an old friend of mine from Boral days. And he said, "Look, our CEO has just departed. We need someone to stand in as an interim role. Could you do that for 6 months?" So I ticked off on that and said, "Yeah, I'll give you 6 months, 3 days a week, because I've got some other stuff I'm doing." And 2.5 years later, I'm here as the full-time CEO. I think he knew what he was doing. I probably knew what he was doing behind the scenes as well, but here we are.
Yeah, fantastic. The role of an association today, I think that's something I'm also really interested in, because as you mentioned there, it's an industry where competitiveness is high, but so is that, I guess, that desire to work together to achieve better solutions for all. So the role of an association like AFBA, can you touch on, I guess, how important that is in today's landscape in the industry, and just, the role that AFBA plays, I guess, and touch on that a bit more about, again, bringing people together to work together.
So I think, there's some really valuable pieces that an association does bring to any industry. And I think the first thing is that it's got to be a trusted source for our client base, and in our case, the client base is the government. Really, it's local government, but it's state government, in particularly driven by state government. State road agencies call the shots when it comes to building roads inside their territories. Federal governments fund it, but state road agencies deliver it. And so they need a trusted voice where they can go to industry and feel that they are getting expertise, that it's independent to the extent that it is, and that it provides an all-encompassing sort of solution, and not a solution for this organisation or that organisation, but it supplies a solution for industry. So as we try to advance knowledge and advance techniques and advance technical know-how, AFBA becomes a source for that for our clients, and also for our members, who can then pull these things forward. I think the other thing that the association does is it is able to take a world lens on things, so it's able to link in with other like-minded organisations around the world. So we're part of a global asphalt pavement alliance, the European Asphalt Association, the US Association, NAPA. South Africa has a thing called Sabita. And so we have these connections that bring technical expertise into to the fore here in Australia, and for us to be able to like handle and put forward as potential solutions and work with state road authorities to advance those things. So I think there's a whole technical aspect to it because it is a very technical industry. But that's one piece of it. The other piece that an organisation like AFPA can do is advocate for the industry, for better solutions, for funding. We can sometimes help state road authorities by saying we need to fund roads more, or we need to think about where we're going with this. I think innovation sort of like ties in very closely with that. So bringing into the industry things like reclaimed asphalt, crumb rubber asphalt, bio-bitumens that are coming along, they're brought by industry to state road authorities who understand some of it but need to work together with the industry who understand another part of it to actually make it work. So we do that as well. And the final thing that I think that we do, and I mentioned this at the start because it's how I got drawn into AFPA, is actually educate and provide knowledge within the industry to bring the next generation of people through and to bring best practice to the fore, so we can provide that training and education both to our industry members but also to our clients, who can then become informed, smart clients who understand what and how to do things beyond what is written in black and white in a specification, to really get the practical, hands-on field sort of knowledge as well. So they're the things we do, I think, as an association.
Yeah, the global best practice you were touching on, and as I was going to touch on with the challenges that we're facing as an industry at the moment with supply and whatnot, how is AFPA working with not only domestically and the colleagues you have with government and whatnot, but also internationally to, dilute the impact as much as possible, considering what's happening.
Yeah. So maybe I'll just take you through it as to what actually happened a little bit, if you like, and that'll help then inform my answer to that. So around about the 10th of March, thereabouts, we got advised by the bitumen importers, the three major bitumen importers into Australia, who are members of AFPA, so Puma, Viva Energy and SAMI, that bitumen supply out of our normal routes out of Asia, out of Singapore and Hong Kong and what have you, refineries from there, was shut down. And two of the refineries that we generally get our bitumen from called force majeure because they couldn't get the oil that they needed from the Strait of Hormuz that we had never heard of before. And so they were shutting us down. Australia takes about 1 million tonnes of 900,000 tonnes of bitumen a year. China takes 33 million. They only had limited supply. They had to look after themselves. Anyway, such was life. And they said, right, we're on the hunt for bitumen. Now, these are big global importers and global organisations who are able to run around and try to source bitumen from wherever they could. And so we were really quickly out of the blocks to let our clients know, in particular the state road authorities. And I wrote, or AFPA wrote, to all of the transport ministers, to the state road agencies, anyone we could think of that was associated with building roads, local government associations and the like, to say, hey, we've got this issue. And the issues were like three issues. One, bitumen ain't coming from where it normally comes from anymore. We're not sure whether we're going to be able to get stock and where we're going to get it from. We're sourcing some now from different parts of the world, and it's going to cost a lot of money as the price goes up, as it did with diesel. And standards and specifications may be different. And we had meetings really quickly with all six really major states in Australia about this, and sort of put this on the table. And they all said every one of them said, our priority is continuity of supply, and we will work through the cost issues and we'll work through the specification issues. As it turned out, specification issues weren't too bad really at all. The bitumen's slightly different in terms of standards in some parts of the world, and then we had to work our way through the costing of it, the pricing of it, and keep an eye on the supply arrangements and whether supply was coming. And we've been able to work our way through it. A lot of bitumen is coming from America or from the American Gulf or Mexican Gulf, depending on your politics, and heading our way. And it sort of worked, and people are continuing to work through it, and it's still alive and still happening at the moment. What we learned from that is that, hey, it's a pretty resilient industry in terms of its ability to be able to flex and move and bounce around and what have you, but there's some pretty big gaps in what was there, and there were a few hairy moments amongst all of that. So we're now at a stage where while that's being continued to manage, when I say we, it's the industry, right? It's not AFPA. It's the industry doing that. But AFPA was the combined voice to talk to all of these state road agencies about what is going on in particular. So as we go forward, our next phase, we're really talking about our next phase now. And people have used the term future-proofing, future-proofing our diesel supply, for example, and the federal government is saying, well, we need to increase our reserves so we have more days of reserve, or building some new refineries, or whatever the case may be. We don't have that luxury to be able to do those things. Bitumen is almost entirely imported into Australia, apart from a bit that's manufactured in Geelong. And that's not going to change tomorrow. So what do we do about future-proofing our supply? And, the answer is to be worked through, but that's where we're at now. We can certainly see that understanding and harmonising our bitumen standards in Australia with what is happening with bitumen that is supplied to the rest of the world, while being true to Australian climate conditions and to Australian needs, is going to be the challenge going forward, I think. And that's the piece of work that needs to be done for the longer term, so that the next time, and there will be a next time, it mightn't be in our generation, but there'll be a next time, we're ready for it and haven't forgotten the lessons of that.
Yeah. I remember when we caught up a month or two ago for an article in the magazine, something that really stuck out was the positive side, silver lining, if you will, with how the industry came together. It was something, not even only the industry, but also the community, and people sort of sacrificing, whether it is driving to work, catching public transport instead. That's the fuel side. But yeah, there was outcomes I think that really showed the community could galvanise and work towards some positivity in some way. Are you still seeing that, and how, I guess, are you trying to mesh the industry and the community together for those outcomes?
The way I would describe it is that as an industry first, right, the whole industry came together and said, we have got a problem and we've got a challenge in front of us here, and it exists in every state. And every state was a little bit different, right, and we're at different stages. But we were able to galvanise the states to begin with to say we want to continue, we want continuity, and we need that continuity going. And so all of the organisations then, I was really proud of the bitumen importers. I've got to give them a shout out, because they took the risk, right? They had to go and source bitumen and come back and say, we've got this bitumen, we've booked this ship, right? We had to book it on spec because we needed to get bitumen to Australia. It's costing a lot more. We're going to have to charge a lot more for it, but we don't have guarantees that governments are going to pay that, and if they don't want to pay it, then who's going to be able to place it? So they had to take all of that sort of like on board and realise that there's an 8-week to maybe 12-week, if they're coming from these states or what have you, lag between when they book a ship to when it lands in Australia. And what if this war stops tomorrow and the price drops right back down again, and I'm left with a ship that's a very expensive ship of bitumen? So they were making those sort of judgments along the way. Meanwhile, the companies that were delivering this stuff into communities and going back to state road authorities and saying, well, these are what our contracts say, and we have these enormous, unprecedented cost spikes coming our way. How can we deal with this? We have some rise and fall provisions in our contracts, but when we look at them, there's some holes in those provisions that we didn't realise were there until we got a shock like this. So I feel like the entire construction community came together like that. The client and the deliverer, the contractor delivering, and the supply chain all pulled together to make that work and to continue to work. I think we also maintained really close contact with organisations like the Civil Contractors Federation, to the people building subdivisions and doing private works for local government, and letting local government associations know these costs are coming, and they had to work and manage within their budgets. That might be, yes, we're paying more for it, but we're going to have to do less to make that work for a local government or for subdivision people. I've got that. Plus I've got all this other stuff like that is actually impacted by the fuel crisis as well, and make their decisions accordingly. So it was a matter of keeping them informed and making sure they could make rational, fair commercial decisions as well. So I think Australia as a construction nation did a pretty good job. We should be proud of themselves.
Yep. What's next in terms of that side of things? So when it comes to, again, helping your members in the community, what does the next few months look like? I know that's difficult to obviously project now, but yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the benefits of the next few months is we're coming into winter, and it is a bit of a seasonal industry, a bit of a seasonal business. So the demand does tend to drop a little in winter. The big projects will want to continue, but a lot of the resealing and resurfacing works slows down over winter and comes back up in summer. So we've got a little bit of lower demand, and that's sort of useful actually, in terms of industry would always like to find a way to work all the way through the year, but it's actually useful in terms of being able to have a breather from this particular issue. And fingers crossed, we'll keep looking, picking up the papers every morning or what have you, and seeing what's going on over in the Middle East. But we will work through being able to normalise our supply chains. I think it's a matter of working through that, and then on the other hand, working through the standards and specifications for bitumen. That'll take a while, right? That won't just happen overnight, but it's something to work through to understand, well, we've managed, do we need to change what we currently have as our standards and specs, or do we need to open our ability to take bitumen from a variety of sources around the world that are going to work for Australia and for Australian conditions? I've learned a lot about bitumen in the last few months. I've learned that not all bitumens are compatible with the polymers that we might put into it, or with the additives or the type of bitumen we want for certain applications. So the companies that are importing that bitumen play a big part in making sure that the bitumen they get is going to work for Australian conditions.
Yeah, it's interesting, that dynamic that not only do you represent your members, but your members are also educating you on what they need, and like you just said, particular aspects of bitumen that maybe you didn't know beforehand. I know you have a very talented technical team at AFBAR, but yeah, how do you find that sort of balance and what they can give back to you as well?
And we also have the client sitting in the room as well, right, at the same time. So we've got a board of directors, and that board is made up of the asphalt and bitumen companies who actually manufacture and place the stuff. It's made up of the members who import the bitumen into Australia, and it also has State Road Authority membership, and it also has membership of all of the smaller supply chain, the rest of the supply chain, and the smaller producer members. So they provide the direction, right? They provide the direction to me as the CEO, and when they come together and say, we need to look at this and to understand this, then that's good direction for me. I provide them with my perspective, right, on what I see from gathering information from around all sorts of aspects. In this case, we're talking about bitumen, but it might be safety, or it might be some other piece of legislation that I see that is coming, or it might be a critical issue for the industry. So we take direction from the board. The board kicks it around, and we work out a way forward. And because we've got all of those people in the room, we're usually able to find a way to actually then keep everybody on the same path, I guess, is the answer there.
Yeah. And for the rest of the year, just overall, what's coming up for AFBAR? I know you've got the conference and whatnot.
So we had a great conference, I think, in Adelaide last year. We run a conference every 2 years. So in October 2027, we're going to be on the Gold Coast. we're definitely going to end up with a session reflecting on what's been happening with this thing. Hopefully it's gone by then, or it's in the rear mirror to some extent, but we're going to get lessons learned from that, and there'll be sessions on that. But we're also bringing in, and very keen to bring in this thing that we call GAPA, the Global Asphalt Pavement Alliance. They're very keen to get to Australia. We will have their AGM at that conference, and we will bring in all of the expertise that comes from around the world to actually talk about a whole range of issues. One of the key, some of the key things that are happening in the industry in the next 12 months will be the implementation of a new carbon calculator for asphalt. So we're working closely with Transport for New South Wales and we've built a life cycle analysis calculator, an updated one that they'll use to then create a carbon library of materials, of asphalt materials, and we're looking to nationalise that as well if we can. We'll be running some safety forums in West Australia and Victoria as a precursor to the conference when it comes along, and we'll be tackling some fairly major and key issues. One of the things that we've been talking about bitumen, and one of the things that is happening and will happen on the 1st of December is that there's new regulations on bitumen fume limits, and the industry is preparing itself for that right now with a series of testing and assessment of all of our works as well. So there's plenty happening. It's going to be a really busy year, and it'll be a longer and more controlled approach to the next conference, so that we'll have it nailed for the Gold Coast in October 2027.
Yeah, the conference has always been great, but Gold Coast is it's not bad, Tony. I tell you, it's not a bad spot.
We wanted to get the internationals here, and we were talking to them about getting GAPA here for its AGM, and we said, we could do it here, we could do it there, or we could do it at the Gold Coast, and I could just see their eyes light up, and we said, all right, we'll do it at the Gold Coast. That'll work out for it. That'll be great. And look, it's the other thing about the Gold Coast is, Queensland's going to be flying, right? It's got a lot of work to do on the Bruce Highway to rebuild that road network, and it'll be gearing up. Queensland will be gearing up for the Olympics as well. There'll be a World Cup, Rugby Cup going on, and Queensland's a good place for rugby. So, some people might want to come for the conference and stay for the rugby. I think that might work out as well. And I think the other thing that we are going to be able to talk a lot about, because of the rebuild that's going on in Queensland, is about how we build, and this is a really critical issue for us at the moment, how we ensure that Australia's road network, which we learned from this, by the way, we learned from this oil crisis that, hey, if trucks run out of diesel and goods stop turning up, right? Communities stop being connected, commerce stops being connected, farm to plate stops, goods and services to the home stops without diesel for trucks, because 85% of our goods and services go on the road. So the roads are really important, and maintaining and keeping our road network alive and healthy and safe and efficient is going to be a really big theme. We're hearing about, we're in Victoria, and unfortunately we have to hear about this term of a pothole plague in Victoria, and that's all about maintaining our road network and keeping our road network up to speed. The nation building sort of projects, the big freeways and all those sort of things, they're great, but we've got a nation it's a massive piece of land. The width of Australia is bigger than the diameter of the moon. It's a big country with a small population, and we've got roads, black ribbons, 500,000 linear kilometres of bitumen sealed roads that go from the north to the south, from Cairns to Melbourne to Hobart and across to Perth, and we've got to keep all that. We've got to keep all that safe and operational and efficient. And the way to do that is to ensure we continue to maintain it with routine resealing of the road. We have a sealed road network. That seal is there because it's a seal. It stops the water from getting in. It stops the elements from destroying the road base that's underneath it. And the bitumen, as it gets older, it will get brittle and it will crack. And if it cracks, the water gets in And the next thing you know, we've got headlines about pothole plagues, and the cost of that is enormous to repair that compared to doing routine, regular resealing maintenance. And I think that'll be a real focus for us for the next 12 months. We've just released a white paper. I've got my colleague Mark here who helped put it all together. And that white paper says reseal 7% of your network every year to keep it maintained in the condition that you need to maintain it in. Your whole of life costs will be lower, your carbon costs will be lower as well, and you'll have a safe, reliable road network. So that's a real focus for us. And I was astonished because we released that paper late last week, and an old colleague of mine wrote to me yesterday and said, great paper, really love the messaging of it, I love this 7%, and it's a minimum of 7%. I think New South Wales aim for 10%, but he said, oh, look, here's a paper written in 1993 by Vic Rhodes. It's called A Stitch in Time. And he said, the parallels are amazing, right? When we went through it, the parallels are amazing. And yet we're getting, and so we're saying, well, the bitumen lasts maybe about 15 years, so that's about 7% of the network to keep it alive. Current rates in some jurisdictions are around 2% of the pavement being resealed. We have this massive set of failures on our road network. And once you get through that tipping point and it fails, the costs escalate exponentially, right? It's 10 to 20 times the cost to fix the road after you've let it fail as opposed to looking after it. So one of the key focus areas for AFPA in the next 12 months is to advocate for the funding that's needed to reseal 7% of the road network because, and I'll just add this little bit, deferring maintenance costs now or not doing the maintenance costs now is not a cost saving. What you're doing is pushing that cost into the next generation. So you're making the next generation. We talk about intergenerational wealth. You're actually pushing that onto the next generation. Right now, we're the next generation who are paying for the last 10 or 15 years of not being able to keep up with that resealing sort of program. It's exacerbated by climate change, by the extreme wet weather events, by the fact that there's more traffic on the road. It's heavier traffic. If we get electric vehicle trucks, it'll be heavier again. So, you know, when you pull those things together and your funding isn't there, you're ending up with roads that are starting to fail and the cost, like I said, becomes exponential. So that's our focus as well for next year.
Yeah.
I think that's a positive thing, but because it's an opportunity, it's a challenge and an opportunity for state governments and for industry to tackle.
Yep. I was going to say, to link it back to the start of the podcast before I let you go, and you are on the record, did you get reported or not? I didn't get the answer. Did you order? I was going to say, I can't see Tony being reported.
I did. Look, it was amateur footy and we were all very friendly people, right? But yeah. I did.
Doesn't sound like a Tony.
My answer to that got me the job was I never got caught. Yeah. Right. So I'll just leave it at that.
No, okay. That sounds good. Sounds good. Thank you so much for joining us today. That was fantastic. Great to chat and great to have AFPA as part of the first ever podcast. So if you want to learn more about the great work that AFPA are doing, make sure to head to Roads Online, or you can read in Roads and Infrastructure magazine, and make sure to check out the next episode of the podcast. Bye for now.